Welcome to the deep dive. We are jumping straight into a crisis that has just fundamentally fractured the core security architecture of the Middle East.
It really has.
We're talking about the seismic rift that has now erupted into, well, direct military confrontation between Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates.
And for decades, the entire world just operated on this one assumption, the assumption of PGCC, Persian Gulf Cooperation Council unity.
Right, led by Riyadh and Abu Dhabi.
Exactly. And that assumption, it effectively died on December 30th, 2025. That was the day the Saudi Royal Air Force launched airstrikes on UAE-supplied military cargo.
At Mukalla port in Yemen. Yeah.
And this wasn't, a warning shot. This was a kinetic confrontation between supposed allies. It's crossed a threshold none of us really thought possible.
Which is why this deep dive is so crucial for you. Our mission here is to really analyze the source material, the intel reports, the strategic analyses, to understand how policy disagreements boiled over into an actual military clash. We'll look at the incompatible visions driving Riyadh and Abu Dhabi, the role the Abraham Accords played, and what all this means for, oil markets and global stability.
So if you want to understand the future of the Middle East and why a fragmented Yemen is now pretty much an irreversible reality, this deep dive is your shortcut.
Okay, let's start with the flashpoint. Let's unpack the timeline, because this all happened incredibly fast. It started just weeks earlier, December 2nd, with Operation Promising Future.
Launched by the Southern Transitional Council, the STC, these are the powerful Southern separatists, and they are backed, trained, and equipped entirely by the UAE.
And what was so stunning was just the speed of it all.
Oh, the speed and the scope. It caught regional observers completely off guard. This wasn't some opportunistic skirmish. You could tell this was months of preparation finally coming to a head.
The territorial gains were just staggering. Within 48 hours, STC forces took Sayyun,
which is the regional capital of Hadramaut Governorate. We're talking about Yemen's largest province by area, a massive piece of land.
But the economic piece was the real game changer.
It was a calculated move. They immediately went for the Petromasila oil facility. Think of it like this. By controlling that one facility, the STC suddenly had its hands on the infrastructure for about 80% of Yemen's oil reserves.
80%. That's not just leverage, that's a stranglehold.
It turns the STC from a regional militia into a real power breaker almost overnight.
And they didn't stop there. The offensive pushed east into Al-Mara Governorate, right on the border with Oman.
And when it was all over, the STC controlled roughly 52% of Yemen's total territory. It's basically the entire geographical footprint of the former South Yemen.
It's de facto secession, achieved with guns.
And if you look at the guns, you see the UAE's signature all over them. These weren't guys in pickup trucks. The STC was deploying Chinese-made AH-4 155mm howitzers.
That's high-precision advanced artillery.
Stuff they never had before. And hundreds of UAE-supplied armored vehicles, that's what gave them that rapid maneuverability to just blitz across the desert.
Which raises the big question. Why did the government resistance just melt away? The PLC, the Presidential Leadership Council, is the Saudi-backed government. Where were they?
Well, our sources point to a mix of command paralysis and, frankly, political desertion. The PLC chairman, Rashad Al-Alimi, he issued no public defense orders for 72 hours. He was just frozen.
Wow.
And even more telling was the failure of the Saudi-trained National Shield Forces. These were the guys specifically created to counter the STC.
And they did nothing.
They either dissolved or just withdrew without a real fight. The local tribal leaders, who are usually on the Saudi payroll, they saw which way the wind was blowing.
They chose a combination over resistance.
They did. The central government was hollowed out. And that leads us straight to Mukalla. The STC offensive laid the groundwork, but the Saudi airstrike. That was the moment the old order truly ended.
So walk us through the intelligence. What did the Saudis see on those ships that made them pull the trigger?
Saudi military tracking was airtight. They followed two vessels. One was the roll-off ship Greenland. They came from the UAE port of Fujairah.
Okay.
And as they got close to Mukalla, they turned off their tracking systems. This wasn't some routine resupply. The cargo was the exact advanced systems that made the STC's offensive possible.
The same Chinese AH-4 howitzers, the armored vehicles, all of it.
All of it. And when the Royal Saudi Air Force hit that cargo, the justification they gave was, well, it was incredibly revealing.
What did they say?
They claimed the weapons were an imminent threat to Saudi national security. Now, that's language you reserve for an adversary. For Iran or its proxies.
Not for a core PGCC partner.
Exactly. To use that term for the UAE's actions means the relationship is fundamentally shifted from alliance to direct strategic competition.
And the fallout was immediate. PLC Chairman Al-Alimi finally acted. He ordered all UAE forces out of Yemen within 24 hours.
He canceled their defense agreement and, crucially, declared a 72-hour air, land, and sea blockade on all the territory the STC had just taken. He was trying to punish the UAE's proxy.
So what did the UAE do?
A classic bit of diplomatic theater. First, they denied everything. Then they quickly announced they would voluntarily withdraw their remaining counterterrorism units.
Aroused this de-escalation.
It sounds like it, but it's really just diplomatic cover for military permanence.
What do you mean by that? Explain that.
The withdrawal only covers the handful of official UAE military guys on the ground. It leaves the estimated 90,000-strong STC force completely intact.
The force that's loyal to Abu Dhabi.
And entirely equipped by them. And they're still in full control of all that new territory, including 80% of the oil. The UAE keeps its influence without the risk of having its own flag flying there.
So this gets to the core of it. We have these two giants, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, pulling in completely opposite directions. Let's start with the Saudi perspective. Why is this move by the STC an existential threat to Riyadh?
It's all about geography. I mean, look at a map. Saudi Arabia shares a massive 1,458-kilometer border with Yemen.
It's huge. You can't just wall it off.
You can't. So the presence of 20,000 highly mobile, well-armed STC fighters right along that border, controlled by another country, that's just an unacceptable vulnerability for Riyadh. Their number one priority has to be securing that southern flank.
Which is why they've always pushed for a unified Yemen, right? The political unity doctrine. They want one government, even a weak one, to deal with.
Precisely. For the Saudis, a single state, under the PLC, gives them a partner to negotiate with, to eventually cut a deal with the Houthis in the north and stabilize that border. Fragmentation is their nightmare scenario.
And they're not just talking, they've moved troops.
Oh yeah. They've amassed somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 troops along the border. That's a very clear signal that a ground intervention is on the table if the SDC pushes too far.
Okay, now let's flip that. The UAE strategy is completely different. It's all about the south and the sea.
For the UAE, it's maritime hegemony. That's the game. They're focused on the coast, specifically the Bab al-Mandab Strait.
The choke point where 10% of all global trade passes through.
Right. If you back the STC, you control the southern coast. You can influence shipping. You can project naval power into the Red Sea. It's a huge strategic prize.
And there's a deep ideological layer to this, too.
Absolutely. Abu Dhabi sees the Saudi-backed Al-Aila Party, which is aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood, as a fundamental threat across the whole region.
So by empowering the STC, which is secular,
they're advancing their broader campaign against political Islam. It fits into what some analysts call their proxy state model. Use loyal local fighters, like the STC, to project your influence without the cost and backlash of a direct occupation.
and unlike Riyadh, Abu Dhabi seems perfectly happy with a permanently fragmented Yemen.
For Abu Dhabi, fragmentation is an acceptable, maybe even preferred outcome. It eliminates any potential for a strong, unified, and potentially hostile neighbor. For Riyadh, it's the worst-case scenario. And those two positions, they're simply irreconcilable.
This is where it gets really complicated, because you have to factor in the Abraham Accords. This diplomatic win for the UAE has actually given it a strategic wedge to use against Saudi Arabia.
It's fascinating. The 2020 Accords went beyond just normalization. They evolved very quickly into what's being called a dynamic security regime between the UAE and Israel.
And that's not just talk. We're talking about actual military hardware.
Yes, tangible capabilities. Israel supplied them with advanced defense systems, the Barak air defense batteries in 2022, Spidey our mobile systems, defense exports just surged.
I remember the numbers. The UAE and Bahrain bought over $853 million in arms from Israel in 2021 alone.
And at the same time, trade ballooned to about $3 billion a year. This partnership gives the UAE a very real protective shield that its bigger neighbor Saudi Arabia doesn't have.
And Saudi Arabia is still on the outside looking in, holding out on normalization, saying it requires credible, irreversible efforts towards Palestinian statehood.
A condition that puts them in a tricky spot. We did see a counterbalance in November 2025, though. The Trump administration agreed to provide the Saudis with F-35s without requiring Israeli normalization first.
But that didn't solve the immediate problem in Yemen.
No. And that's the core issue, the Yemen connection. The Abraham Accords directly emboldened the UAE to make this move with the STC.
How so? Connect those dots.
The Israeli defense tech protects UAE territory from potential Houthi missile retaliation. So, the risk calculation for Abu Dhabi changes completely. Suddenly, an aggressive move in Yemen looks a lot less risky.
And Riyadh sees this. They see the UAE using these new strategic advantages, which they got from the Accords, against Saudi interests.
Exactly. So the Mukalla airstrike was never just about the cargo on those ships. It was Saudi Arabia sending a kinetic message.
A message that says, we will not let you use the leverage you gain from a partnership we reject at our expense.
It changes the entire balance of power in the Gulf. It really does.
Yeah.
This rivalry is now playing out everywhere. It's an economic Cold War as much as a political one.
Let's talk about the money. The fiscal divergence is huge.
It's a foundational problem. Saudi Arabia needs oil at, what, $81 to $82 a barrel just to balance its 2025 budget? That's because of the incredible costs of Vision 2030.
Meanwhile, the UAE is fine at a much lower price.
The UAE can balance its budget at around $50 a barrel.
That's a $30 gap. It means the UAE has zero economic incentive to follow Saudi production cuts.
And they don't. Sources estimate the UAE is overproducing by 400,000 to 500,000 barrels a day over its OPEC plus quota. That directly undermines Riyadh's main tool for keeping prices stable.
And then you have the direct competition, Riyadh versus Dubai. The Saudi Regional Headquarters Program is a direct shot at the UAE's entire economic model.
It is. It forces multinationals to move their headquarters to the kingdom if they want government contracts. And we see this same proxy pattern playing out right across the Red Sea and Sudan.
It's a perfect mirror image of Yemen.
It really is. In Sudan, the UAE backs the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF,
Right.
weapons, funding, access to gold markets.
And on the other side, Saudi Arabia backs the official Sudanese armed forces, the SAF, and tries to position itself as the mediator.
This competition through proxies, it's become the dominant mode of interaction between them.
So with these two giants focused on blocking each other in Yemen and Sudan, who's the real winner in all this chaos?
Unquestionably, the Houthis. While the anti-Houthi coalition has been fragmenting, they've been quietly consolidating their control over northern Yemen. That includes the capital, Sana'a, and most of the population.
They've been building a state.
A parallel state. Taxation, security, administration, they're exercising perfect strategic patience. This split allows them to renew operations against Marib, the critical energy hub.
And they still hold the Red Sea card.
They do. They've paused the attacks on shipping, but their leadership was explicit. They reserve the right to resume them at any time, and they know their main rivals are now busy blockading each other.
So what does this all mean for us? This crisis seems to expose two critical, irreversible realities that policymakers have to face now.
First, the idea of PGCC unity is over. It's a fiction. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are pursuing irreconcilable strategies. They have different economic needs, different ideologies, and opposing defense alliances.
You can't assume they're on the same team anymore.
Not at all.
Oh.
And second, Yemen's fragmentation is here to stay. You have the Houthi North, the STC South, and what's left of the PLC. Any policy that pretends you can put that back together into a unified state is it's doomed to fail.
So diplomacy has to change. It has to accept this de facto fragmentation and just try to manage the risk.
Instead of pushing for an impossible peace.
Yeah, so here's a final thought I want to leave you with, based on this new reality.
Yeah.
If Saudi Arabia and the UAE can't reconcile, and the UAE-backed STC keeps control of 80% of Yemen's oil and the whole southern coast, what happens when the Houthis decide to restart their campaign against Red Sea shipping? They know the coalition that was built to stop them is now focused inward on its own civil war. This dynamic doesn't just reshape Middle East security, it fundamentally escalates global maritime risk for every single nation that depends on that trade route.
The rules of the region have changed, and how international actors navigate this new reality will define security for the next decade.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.